Hi there, it's Gordon again, and I'm here to bring you some more EFT for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who are still struggling to overcome some of the programming that they've had. And I count myself in that as well. These sessions not only help you, but they help me too. Today I'd like to concentrate on guilt. Okay, the reason why I'd like to do something on guilt is because the Jehovah's Witnesses, like many religions, use guilt as a tremendous a way of manipulating the people. Okay, guilt is a great thing to use if you want to control people. Religions have used it ever since the dawn of mankind, really. You know, we felt guilty about everything, and they ladle it on. Some religions teach you that when you're born, you're guilty. You're born guilty. Most Christian religions do, claiming that Jesus is the only one who's going to forgive you for your sins because you sin constantly. Now imagine that as a thought process, that from the moment that you're born you're guilty, you're sinful. How does that make you feel? And how would that make you feel if you were indoctrinated with that belief? Well, what happens is that you end up feeling pretty shitty about yourself. You end up feeling guilty about, well, just about everything. Okay, so what is it to feel guilty about? What do the Jehovah's Witnesses teach you that you should feel guilty about? Well, for a start off, you should feel guilty about being alive, because you are a sinner. You've sinned ever since you were born, and you'll continue to sin until you die. You're a sinner. Okay. Now they reinforce that, the Jehovah's Witnesses, by putting laying down a set of rules that are so stringent, so absolutely difficult to follow, that nobody can follow them within the whole of the religion. Nobody can follow the Jehovah's Witness rules constantly. How do I know that? Well, it just goes without saying. I spent 21 years watching people, not just myself, but every single person around me, breaking the rules. Some people did it and repented and came forward and presented themselves to the elders. Some people didn't. The majority of people didn't. And the majority of elders didn't either. And they were all breaking the rules. You just need to go into any forum and ask a simple question. What was going on around you in your congregation? The stories are incredible. I actually consider myself to be really quite a good person in comparison to some of the things that were happening in my congregation all around me, amongst my peers and amongst the elders and things like that. So, these rules that they've set are too high. Jesus couldn't follow those rules, nor probably would he, if he exists, of course. So, instantly, you see, what they've done is they've set us up for a fall. We are set up for a fall. We're kind of the patsies in all of this. They set us some rules that we can't follow, and then they make us feel bad because we can't follow them. So we're always going to feel guilty. Now when you feel guilty, what happens to you? You feel guilty and you say, next time I'll do it right. Next time I'll do it right. And of course, sometimes you do, most times you don't. And each time you say, well, the next time. Okay, and you're in this constant cycle of feeling guilt and doing something about it. You may be doing an extra hour on the field service, or talking to somebody about how wonderful the Jehovah's Witness cult is, because of the guilt that you feel, because you know that you're not living up to the standards. But not only that, when you look around you, sometimes it looks like other people are living up to the standards. Everybody says, oh yes, it's wonderful to be in Jehovah's organisation, and isn't it marvellous that he puts these rules here for us to follow? And you think, my God, is it only me? Is it only me that's falling short every day? But of course it's everybody. But nobody talks about it, do they? People don't want to talk about it. They don't. The rule is, as a Jehovah's Witness, so I found, whatever you do it behind closed doors. You do it out of sight of the gods, which are the elders. And as long as the elders don't know, it doesn't matter. If God knows, it doesn't matter, as long as the elders don't know. Alright, what does guilt do for us? Well, you see, guilt is it leaves us impotent. It takes away our energy, it robs us of our happiness. Because when you feel guilty, how do you feel? Is it an upbeat, bang, bang, bang type of emotion, or is it a downbeat, feeling shitty, not feeling good about myself, low self-esteem type of emotion? Well, of course, it's the latter, isn't it? And think of the things that we've got to feel guilty about. As a Jehovah's Witness, you spend just about your whole life feeling guilty about not doing enough in the field service, feeling guilty about not having good and upstanding thoughts, feeling guilty about all the things you do wrong, for the extra pint that you had last night that you shouldn't have had. So as a Jehovah's Witness, you feel guilty. Imagine how an ex-Jehovah's Witness must feel. How do you feel? Guilty about lots of things. Guilty about the fact that you were tricked into being a Jehovah's Witness in the first place. Guilty about the fact that even if you were born into it, that you just put up with it and you went along with it until finally you didn't. Guilty about the fact that you went out and preached this crap to other people. Guilty about the fact that perhaps you shunned other people who were disfellowshipped. Perhaps you treat people very badly because you truly believed things at the time. Guilty about the fact that you wasted so many years of your life in this crap, believing this crap, talking about this crap, living it. Guilty about the fact that you didn't leave early enough. Guilty about the fact that because you've left, you've damaged part of your family. Guilty about the fact that you've probably split some of your family apart because you've left. Guilty about the fact that your family are shunning you as a bad person. So there are lots and lots of things that we have been programmed to feel guilty about. Does guilt help us? Guilt could be a helpful emotion if we viewed it as something for the future. You see, guilt, I believe, is there to help us understand that we did something wrong. True guilt. We did something wrong, but that's not where it stops. Guilt should be the motivation for us to go and put something right. If we've hurt somebody, to go and say sorry. If we've done something bad, to go and undo it or to do something different. So guilt really could be a motivator, but only for the future. Guilt for the past is an absolute waste of time, and I'm sure you agree with me on that. So, how guilty do you feel as you think about it now? As you go through all of the guilty things that you've done and maybe still continue to do, how guilty do you feel? And how much of that guilt do you think has been programmed into you? Remember, the Jehovah's Witnesses are fantastic at programming people's minds. They are experts at it. They've had a whole century of practice and they keep doing it. And look how good they are at it, programming people. Even the people who've left, still running those old programs, and guilt's one of them. So now, what we're going to do together, if you like to, is to do some EFT on guilt and on the guilty feelings that we feel. Now, there are lots of reasons why we could feel guilty. I'm just going to run through some, and you can perhaps subconsciously or in the back of your mind run through the other things that you're guilty about. And I want you to get the feeling of guilt up as high as you possibly can. Really feel it. EFT works the best when you can really access that feeling of guilt. Get it as high as you can. Okay? So here we go. How guilty are you? How guilty do you feel about having been a Jehovah's Witness? How guilty do you feel about having left and caused so much trouble? So much trouble. How guilty do you feel about having tried to convert other people, or maybe having converted other people to being Jehovah's Witnesses? How guilty are you for having perhaps shunned other people who were disfellowshipped? How guilty are you about allowing yourself to be tricked be fooled into all this crap? How guilty do you feel about not having left when you should have left? As soon as you knew. How guilty do you feel about having been tricked into it, if you were tricked into it? Being convinced. How guilty do you feel about not seeing the real reality of its stupidity? So how guilty do you feel about the relationships that you've got with the members who are still Jehovah's Witnesses? How guilty do you feel about that? Do you feel that you've caused some of that? You've been responsible for that breakdown of relationships? How guilty do you feel about what you've done in your acts? And how guilty do you feel about what you do today? How guilty do you feel about celebrating Christmas or celebrating birthdays? How guilty do you feel about not praying when you eat? So how guilty do you feel now? Now, notice where that guilt is in your body. It'll have a place. Okay, just put your hand over where you feel the guilt. Might be in your stomach or in your chest or somewhere like that. And I'd like you to give that guilt a colour. And I really want you now to experience that guilt. Perhaps you can let the colour begin to expand throughout your body. All the way up to the top of your head, down to your toes, down to the ends of your fingers. Really feel that guilt. And I want you to give it a number. 0 being no guilt and 10 being maximum. And get it up as high as you can. Really feel guilty. Really feel guilty. For the last time. Okay. And with me, just start. Tap in. And repeat everything I say. If I say something that doesn't really gel with you, that's fine. Just say it anyway. And trust that your unconscious mind will put it right. Okay? So here we go. Even though I feel guilty about so many things, I approve of myself. I'm an okay person. Even though I feel guilty about all the stupid things that I've done and still do. I'm all I need to be right now. I'm a good person. Even though I feel guilty about everything that I got involved with and everything I did and the trouble I've caused. I love and approve of myself. I'm a good person. Okay, so off we go. Start with the top of the head. This guilt in between the eyes. I feel so guilty sometimes inside of the eye. I really don't like this guilt under the eye. I feel guilty about so many things under the nose. I feel guilty about things I've done under the lip. I feel guilty about things I think. Collarbones. I feel guilty. I feel guilty about so many things. I feel guilty about who I am and who I've been under the arm. I hate this guilt. It feels so horrible inside my body. Top of the head. And sometimes I think I deserve to feel this way. You know, I feel so guilty. Just follow me. I feel so guilty that sometimes maybe I deserve it. I deserve this bad feeling. Because I've done some stupid things. I've done some things I feel really guilty about. I was tricked into being a Jehovah's Witness. Or I was roped into being a Jehovah's Witness. I should have seen that this wasn't for me. I put up with being a Jehovah's Witness for far too long. I should have known that this was a load of rubbish, it was a load of crap. And yet I went along and I did some really bad things. I shunned people that were disfellowshipped. I treat them the way that I'm being treated now. And I feel so guilty about that. I feel guilty about having gone out on the field service and tried to convert people to be Jehovah's Witnesses. I feel guilty about all the things I said, all the criticisms I made about people who weren't Jehovah's Witnesses, all the criticisms I made about disfellowship people and how I felt so much better than they. I felt so much holier than thou, even though deep down I knew that I wasn't a good person. I feel guilty about all the rules that I broke, and even now I still feel guilty about the rules that I'm breaking, and I don't even know why. I feel guilty about the relationships that I've broken up. I feel guilty about what I've caused by leaving. The terrible relationship I have with some of my relatives now who are still Jehovah's Witnesses. I feel guilty about what I did. I feel guilty about leaving. And I feel guilty about not leaving on time. Not leaving when I knew I should leave. I feel guilty about all the time I spent stupidly believing all that crap. I believed all that crap. And I don't even know why. It was so patently obvious it was crap. And yet I went and believed it. Well, I must be absolutely stupid. And I feel guilty about that. However, I'm willing to accept the possibility that this guilt can go now. Because this guilt isn't my guilt. I'm willing to accept the possibility that this guilt has just been programmed into me. It was never mine in the first place. I'm willing to accept that I was born a perfect person. A beautiful little baby. I was born a lovely, wonderful, worthy person. And this guilt has been poured on me by embittered, horrible people who just want to control. I'm willing to accept that I'm a good, worthy person. And I'm willing to let this guilt go now. This guilt isn't even mine. It's been given to me. It's been forced on me. I'm a good person. I do good things. And sometimes I don't. Just like every other good person. And I'm sorry for having been a Jehovah's Witness. I'm sorry for having done what I've done. But that's in the past. And now I've made a decision to go forward and be a good person. And I'm going to help people where I can help people. And more importantly, I'm going to help myself so that I can help other people. And so I let this guilt go now, because this guilt has no place for me. This guilt of the past is worthless. It doesn't help. It doesn't help me at all, and so I let it go. I let it go. I let this guilt go now. I let this guilt go, and I choose to feel worthy. I let this guilt go and I choose to feel like a good person. I let this guilt go and I choose to be a good person and to feel like a good person. I let this guilt go. I let it go. I release and let it go. I release and let it go. I release and let it go. Top of the head, just finish here. I let this guilt go and I choose to be a good person and to be worthy. I take a deep breath. And now just notice what's left of that guilt, if anything. And I'd like you to finish just with the power triangle. Okay? Putting your finger in between your eyes and your thumb just under your lip. And then just gently rub round. And as you rub round, breathe. And just notice how the last remnants of that guilt just disappear from the body. Just watch the guilt go. Feel it go. It has no place, it's not even yours. And just let that go now. Just let it go. That's it. Deep breath. And let it out. And so now, after that, well done that you've gone through that. There might have been some things that I missed, some things I said that weren't quite appropriate for you, but that's okay. The act of doing this and the act of talking about that old guilt is tremendously cathartic. Now notice what's left, if anything, and notice how much that level of anxiety, or whatever you want to call it, has dropped. Now what I would recommend is, until you get that down to 0, or at least down to a level that for you is very manageable, I would continue to run through this. Go back to when we started tapping and just run through. Add your own words. If there's anything else that comes to mind as you tap, notice what's left and just keep tapping on it until it's gone. And it will go. It always does, because it's not yours, and it never was. You're a good person, and you deserve everything. So you can just let that old guilt go now. Okay, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.